Okay, so to begin today, I have a bit of a rhetorical question I want you to think about just for a second. And that is, if you could pick one person in church history other than Jesus or the disciples who had the biggest effect on how we see Christianity today, who would that be? And I gave this a little bit of thought, and for me, that person would probably have to be Martin Luther. Richard Hooker had this to say about Martin Luther. Martin Luther stands in history as one of those unique forces, an individual who, by force of will and by his ideas, changed the world fundamentally. Now, Martin Luther's life had a huge impact on how we view Christianity today. So I want you to listen as I talk a little bit about this man's history, about his life, and some of the things that he did, so that you can see just how big of an impact he had on how we view Christianity today. The first thing, I want you to take a quick look at this short biography, short timeline of his life. Some of the things that he did. He was born in 1483, which we'll go over in just a second. And then he was a monk for a little while and a doctor of theology. He did a lot of different things. Some of the major things that we remember him for is the 95 Thesis, when he was exiled from the Roman Catholic Church, and a few more things, which I'll go into more detail here in just a moment. Now, the first thing that we need to talk about is Martin Luther's early years. So he was born, like I said, in 1483, on November 10th, 1483, to his father, Hans Luther, which was later changed to Luther, and his wife, Margaret, in Eisleben, Germany, which was then part of the Holy Roman Empire. And later on in his life, Martin Luther's father was determined for him to become a lawyer. So he sent him to the best Latin schools where he studied grammar and rhetoric and logic. And later on in his life, Luther humorously described his education there to, he compared it to purgatory and hell. And then later in 1501, at the age of 17, he entered the University of Erfurt, which he later described as a beer house and a whorehouse. So you can see that he didn't have a very high view of his education. Later on, he went into that same university to study law, but dropped out shortly after that and said that he viewed law as representing uncertainty because there was no definite truth involved. Everything was a little bit circumstantial. So the major things that we remember Martin Luther for today is his role in the Reformation of the church. And there's a few things that we see him as having a big influence in regard with his objections to the way that the Roman Catholic Church did things in that day. The first thing that we really remember him for is his 95 Thesis, which was a list of 95 sentences that he talked about and had major objections with the way things were done in the Roman Catholic Church. The major issue being the sale of indulgences, which leads me into the next thing that he's remembered for, and that's justification by faith. He believed that we are saved by faith and that it has nothing to do with our works, but the Roman Catholic Church was teaching something different, so he had a major objection to that. Now, on June 15th, 1520, the Pope sent out a papal bull which basically commanded Luther to recant of his 95 Thesis, or else he would be excommunicated 60 days later. And in response to that, Luther publicly set fire to the papal bull and then was excommunicated on January 3rd, 1520. And the final thing that we really remember Luther for was his translation of the Bible into German, which was his native tongue. He translated it from Greek into German, which allowed the common people to have access to the Word of God, which at the time was not something that they had in that area of the world. Later on in his life, in the last 5 years of his life, unfortunately, it was characterized by sickness. He was very sick for the last 5 years or so up until his death. He had a stroke, which deprived him of his speech, and then later died on February 18th, 1546, at the age of 62. So as you can see, Martin Luther did a lot of things, and we didn't have time to cover all of them in detail today. But he really challenged the way that things were done, and he challenged the way that they look at Christianity today, or back then, and as a result changed the way that we look at Christianity today. Thank you.